What's up, y'all? It's GC Kinsey here to talk about gay marriage, how it's under attack in the US right now, and how, as important as it is, it's not the same thing as queer liberation. In 2015, Kim Davis, in her role as a county clerk in Kentucky, was briefly jailed for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-gender couples, despite the US Supreme Court ruling Obergefell v. Hodges that required her to do so. Now, 10 years later in 2025, Kim Davis has crawled back out of the woodwork to ask the Supreme Court to reconsider that case and potentially overturn that ruling. And you want to know why she can do that? Because a Supreme Court ruling in favor of gay marriage doesn't mean the gays won. But that's an argument I've heard time and time again, especially in these last 10 years since the Obergefell ruling, when a lot of the focus and the conversations around queer rights have shifted to the trans community. 2015 was the same year when Caitlyn Jenner came out as trans, the same year when I Am Jazz, the reality TV show documenting the transition of Jazz Jennings, premiered on TLC. And shortly before that, in the summer of 2014, Laverne Cox was featured on the cover of Time magazine in an issue titled The Transgender Tipping Point. Right around the point when gay marriage got legalized, trans visibility was rapidly on the rise. And the timing of that here in the US, the way we had a major push and focus on legalizing gay marriage for about a decade, followed by a major rise in trans visibility the decade after, had a lot of people saying, oh, the gays won, so all the haters turn their focus on the trans community next. But as someone who's both trans and gay, I can tell you it's not that simple. Was gay marriage a big deal? Yes. Was it necessary? Hell yes, especially when you consider the rights that spouses have in a lot of legal and housing and medical and other kinds of situations. The last thing I want to do here is downplay the importance of gay marriage. Legalizing it was a huge step in the right direction, not only for gay rights, but for queer rights more broadly. Not only that, it played a major role in the social acceptance of queer people and the normalization of us in broader society. But did it mean the gays won? No. Did it mean homophobia was over? No. Did it mean that all the haters gave up on gay people and moved on to targeting trans people next? No. Homophobia may have taken a back seat to transphobia in the US, especially over this last decade, but there are still plenty of cisgender people losing their jobs, their housing, their families, being sent to conversion therapy, being harassed or hurt or even killed for being gay. And those gay marriage rights we've had for the last 10 years are so tenuous. We could lose them just as easily as we gained them. In fact, I've hinted at that on this channel before. Here in the US, we have gay marriage, at least for now. That's not going to stop with marginalized groups like trans folks and aspec folks who are more on the fringes. It's going to keep spreading. And I don't like to say I told you so, but literally, I told you so. You can't say I didn't warn you. And you know what? I'm not the only one. The conservative justices on the Supreme Court, and really the whole Republican Party, have been giving us plenty of warnings that gay marriage rights are on the chopping block. In 2022, the court overturned Roe v. Wade, the landmark case that had given Americans the right to abortion since 1973. And in his concurring opinion on that ruling, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote that the other justices should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and, you guessed it, Obergefell. Furthermore, Project 2025, the conservative policy plan that our current administration seems hell-bent on following, has this to say. Families comprised of a married mother, father, and their children are the foundation of a well-ordered nation and healthy society. Unfortunately, family policies and programs under President Biden's Health and Human Services are fraught with agenda items focusing on LGBTQ+ equity, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, and penalizing marriage. These policies should be repealed and replaced by policies that support the formation of stable, married, nuclear families. The Health and Human Services chapter of Project 2025 was written by Roger Severino, by the way, who served as legal counsel in cases opposing gay marriage. You see where they're going with this? And not only are gay marriage rights so tenuous, they're also just the tip of the iceberg of all the other rights that the queer community needs before we will truly be seen as equals and protected as equals under the law. Conversion therapy, housing discrimination, healthcare discrimination against queer people, including from both providers and insurance companies, are all still legal in parts of the US. Queer people are supposedly protected from employment and workplace discrimination under the 2020 Supreme Court ruling Bostock v. Clayton County, but that ruling is really hard to enforce. Cases like that are really hard to prove. Workplace discrimination still happens all the time. Plus, who knows how long that ruling will last at the rate things are going. The queer community is also losing rights all the time through state and local legislation and federal executive orders. And while a lot of that does focus on the erosion of trans rights in the form of bathroom bans, sports bans, military bans, rules about gender markers on IDs, etc., it's not exclusively anti-trans. Drag bans and don't say gay laws in education, for example, affect a whole lot more queer people more broadly than just the trans community. Queer people have had to fight to gain every right we've ever had in the US and have had to continue fighting to keep them. Gay marriage is no different, and that's why it makes me want to tear my hair out when I hear people use that as an excuse to say that the gays won. As much as we can and should celebrate our victories when we happen, we can't let ourselves get complacent about them. We can't have the mindset of, we've won, it's over, time to move on. With this video, I especially want to address not only anyone who thought the gays won after Obergefell, but who used that as an excuse to pull up the ladder behind them, so to speak. Who thought it's not important to keep putting pressure on our government to enshrine those gay marriage rights into legislation instead of just relying on a Supreme Court ruling that could be overturned. Or anyone who thought we don't have to keep fighting for all the other rights our community needs, especially not the rights of those weird trans freaks who make all the rest of us look bad. We got ours, so who cares about them? Because guess what? You have the rights that you do, including the right to marry, because of the work that the trans community, particularly Black and Latina trans women, have done for the entire rest of the queer community. In case history has taught you nothing, I hope that now, at the very least, the threat of losing Obergefell might convince you that respectability politics never got anyone anywhere. Conservatives don't care if you're one of the good gays, they hate all of us. And they will come for all of us if they can, no matter how much we may think we've won. Our only hope is to band together as a united queer community. And beyond that, to band together with other marginalized people, like women, like people of color, like disabled people, like neurodivergent people, etc., who are all being affected by this push toward a future that doesn't care about human rights or bodily autonomy. I want to close all this out by saying that I remember all too well the time before the Obergefell ruling. I remember how, despite being an optimist by nature, I was very pessimistic about the prospect of gay marriage in the US as I watched the battle for it unfold. I didn't realistically think that I would get to see gay marriage legalized here in the US until I was in maybe my 50s or 60s or even older. And most of my gay friends were even more pessimistic. They didn't think we'd get to live to see it happen at all. I remember the shock and joy I felt when the news about Obergefell broke, and my friends and I were all proven so incredibly wrong, because we weren't even 30 yet and suddenly this impossible dream of gay marriage getting legalized had come true. I remember how much hope it gave me for the future. So much of that hope has withered away now because we've gone so far backwards in such a short time, but I haven't given up on it completely. I can't. Because I've seen how much progress the queer community has made just in my lifetime. I've read so much history about the progress we've made before I was here. On a much more personal level, I saw with my own eyes just how much the small, conservative, evangelical Christian Bible Belt southern US town I grew up in changed for the better for queer people during the time when I lived there from the early 90s into the 2010s. And I refuse to believe that was all meaningless. I'm asking you to refuse to believe it too. If you've ever thought the gays won, then let this threat to Obergefell be a wake-up call and a call to you to join the fight for queer liberation. If you're feeling panicked about the threat to Obergefell, stop and take a breath, because the Supreme Court hasn't picked it back up yet. They've just been asked to reconsider it. We still have time, so take that time to channel your panic into fighting against this with everything that you have. And if you're feeling defeated by the threat to Obergefell and everything else happening, just remember, that's exactly how queer conservatives like the president, the Republicans in Congress, the conservative justices on the Supreme Court, and yes, Kim Davis want you to feel. Are you going to give them what they want, or are you going to tell them what you want? And that's where I'm going to wrap things up and turn the conversation over to you. For those of you who are also in the US, how do you plan to help protect Obergefell and keep fighting for all the other rights that the queer community needs? Do you have any strategies for effective organizing? If you're not in the US and you've helped fight for queer rights in your country, what advice can you offer? And whether you're in the US or not, whether you're queer or not, what questions do you have about all this? Drop a comment below and let's get a discussion going. You can also reach out to me on other social media. I'm GC Kinsey across all platforms. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I've got more vlogs like this one about my experiences as a queer person. I've got cosplay music videos, cosplay tutorials, a whole bunch of cool resources for singers about voice changes on testosterone, and more right here on this channel. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything new. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support. I hope you'll join me in the fight for queer liberation, and I will see you on the next one.